Drawn to the Girl, Chapter 2, First Part. Blue light was just beginning to spill through the gaps in the blinds over the windows, facing east, when a monocled gentleman called on Dee's room. Through the door, the hunter asked, "What's your business?" While the voice froze him in his tracks, the man replied, "Brewer is the name. Just a little while ago I heard some talk about you at the tavern. I suppose the sheriff's done with you by now. You'd best open up," he ordered haughtily. There was no reply. Clearing his throat, Brewer then changed his tack. The voice that spilled from between his thick lips was coaxing. "I'm sorry, please forgive my rudeness. The fact of the matter is I'm a recruiter. The girl you said to have helped, Rhea, was it? She's already been paid $6,000 to take employment in the capital. I even have the contract I drew up with her father. However, when I came back a week ago, I find 3 strange farmhands there who simply won't let me have the girl. Worse yet, they've gone and left no less than 5 young men with all sorts of broken bones. As for Rhea, she's not shaking her head and refusing to leave her father or anything. I was at my wit's end when I happened to hear about you, and I prayed the whole time I was running over here. So what say you? You'll be handsomely rewarded. Would you be good enough to somehow deliver Rhea to me, Mr. D?" The last part of that was one of the aces he'd been holding. Not a soul in the village knew the hunter's name. There was no reply. Looking quite dissatisfied, the recruiter fiddled a bit with his sharp little bow tie before saying, "Actually, I had the pleasure of seeing you from a distance once a long time ago. That's when I learned your name and what you looked like. The dashing vampire hunter D, famed throughout the frontier. My truly is an honor to have another chance to meet you. I would appreciate it if you'd open up." Again, no answer came. Brewer went to his second ace. Lowering his voice and bringing his mouth closer to the door, he said, "While I may be a bit imprudent, I certainly wouldn't ask the greatest hunter on earth to involve himself in mundane matters. Mr. D, the girl, Rhea, actually had the shadow of the nobility hanging over her." A minute later, Brewer sat at a beat-up table across from D. His mouth hung open, a natural enough response, and it didn't close for quite some time, as if leaving it that way were a form of courtesy. "You mentioned the nobility, didn't you?" asked the hunter. "Yes," the man replied, his jaw finally moving. The horribly beautiful gaze remained locked on him. "I needn't lie or conceal anything, not from anyone as stunning as yourself. Seeing you up close is almost enough to make another man melt like butter, you know. The government official in the capital who wants the girl is actually a researcher studying the nobility, and on checking some ancient documents, he discovered that she definitely has noble blood on her. As a result, I was hired to bring her back in the utmost secrecy." "What's the name of your employer?" Brewer smoothly replied with a ridiculously long name. "And where's this document?" "I've seen it personally. You may not be aware of this, but in the Forbidden Zone in the capital, vast remains of an ancient city were discovered about 3 years ago. Particularly conspicuous among the theaters and halls was a massive library, which I believe was called Alexandria or something to that effect. The document in question was discovered in its subterranean storerooms. Bugs had eaten through it in places, and it looked to me wholly illegible. But my employer is an expert in such things. He was remarkably successful in deciphering it. In it were detailed lineages of various noble families scattered across the frontier." "And the girl, she's a noble?" "From what I was told. She's probably not a pure noble. He said she may be an abductee, although I'm not particularly well-versed in—" "So you ain't interested in anything but a payday from this government official?" The reason Brewer knit his brow was not only because the hoarse voice was both like Dee's voice and unlike it at the same time, but even more because it sounded like it was coming from the vicinity of his waist, which was concealed by the table between them. "Do you have any proof she's an abductee?" This time the voice was unequivocally Dee's. Only the official back in the capital would know that for sure. Since I never expected to find myself in the current situation, I don't have any proof with me. Of course, I'd be happy to send one of my young assistants to the capital to fetch the document, but I doubt whether the owner would allow it out of his possession. And what would you know about those other 3 characters? Ah, yes, them. Well, you see, the recruiter began, lowering his voice with great purposefulness. Before I left the capital, what my employer told me was that abductees with noble blood sometimes have these mysterious guardian types looking out for them. Sometimes it might take the shape of a beast. Other times, a sudden bit of good luck that protects the descendant of the nobility. Now my guess would be that there are probably some variation on this. That would make sense. The hoarse voice said again, shocking Brewer. How long have you been trading in flesh out on the frontier? Asked Dee. What do you mean by that? I'll have you know I'm a perfectly respectable mediator in matters of employment and... The man then shut his mouth and rolled his eyes up to the ceiling as he said, 30 years. If you've been out here 3 decades, you should know just how few abductees ever come back alive. Do you have any evidence of that happening to her? Since you asked, there is this. Taking an electronic recorder out of his jacket pocket, he flipped on the switch. On it was a recording of discussions between Brewer and the sheriff, the doctor, and various influential people around the village. In response to the flesh trader's questions, each of them declared that in her infancy, Raya had disappeared for a whole year. When the machine finished relating their testimony, Brewer said he wanted to hire Dee outright to take Raya back from those 3 characters, adding, 2 weeks ago those 3 show up out of the blue. I wouldn't be at all surprised if their boss, a true noble, was coming too. I want you to take care of all of them. First part end. Second part. The next day, Raya's eyes bulged when she saw the highly unlikely pair that paid a call on her farm. What about those 3 characters? Dee inquired. When I got back from visiting the sheriff, they were gone. I haven't seen hide nor hair of them today. Raya's voice bounced back to him. But the departure of the mysterious strangers wasn't the only thing that made her dark eyes glow with enthusiasm. That's just dandy. Well, will you come along with me then, just like your father agreed to in our contract? The flesh trader said, still trying to take the girl by the arm. I realize that, but please just wait a little longer. Raya beseeched him. I have to give the matter of my father some thought, and I have to say goodbye to a few acquaintances. Give me another week at least. I guess that can't be helped. Very well then, Brewer replied, conceding easily. Needless to say, that wasn't how he really felt. But he'd promised Dee he'd wait at least a week to see if the nobility showed up. He didn't really intend to wait that long, and he kept insisting he wanted to head back to the capital immediately. But the hunter told him in that case he wouldn't accept the job, keeping any remarks about how ruthless he was for such a handsome man locked away in his heart. Brewer accepted the hunter's conditions. As long as he had this young man on his side, he was completely covered, where the 3 weirdos were concerned. And if he just waited out the week, later he'd be able to keep playing up the nobility angle and hopefully get the hunter to come along as an escort all the way back to the capital. In his heart, he secretly sucked out his tongue at the hunter. The whole story of abductees and the nobility was a complete fabrication. The voices on the recorder were simply some local folks he'd hired to play along for 10 gold coins. His sole concern was that the handsome vampire hunter was unlike so many others plying the same trade. But since he really couldn't put his finger on what made Dee different, there was no point worrying about every little thing. Very well, I'll stay in town for another week then, Brewer told the girl. But the damn hotel bills are liable to break me. I know, Rhea replied. Just then, the door to the next room opened roughly, and the smell of liquor hit the noses of all. The middle-aged man, who appeared with a ruddy face, was Rhea's father. "Go on and get the hell out of here already," her father bellowed, despite the fact he could barely work his tongue. "If Rhea sticks around, there's no telling when more of them freaky bastards will come barging in. And that kind of trouble I can do without. Thanks to them, the whole village must think I'm the lowest of the low. When I heard you wanted to take my girl with you, I was genuinely relieved. So why the hell are you still hanging around?" "Actually, sir, let's discuss the matter elsewhere." After Brewer had disappeared to try and get the father to go along with the story he told Dee, Ray remained staring sadly at the vampire hunter. "What's wrong?" asked Dee. It was rare for this young man to show any interest in others. Actually, it was more like an earth-shaking event. "Nothing. I just thought it would be nicer if you'd come alone." "He's my employer." "I realize that. He's going to take me back to the capital." And then, as if cradling a certain expectation, she suddenly asked, "Will you be going with us?" "I don't know." The color that had suffused Rhea's countenance for an instant swiftly faded away. As she got to her feet, she said, "I'm sorry I haven't even offered you tea." Disappearing into the kitchen, she quickly reappeared with a steaming kettle and a teacup. Pouring the contents of the kettle into the cup, she said, "Here you go." Her eyes were turned down as she offered him the drink. Taking the cup in hand, he said, "Could I trouble you to put some tea leaves in it?" With a stunned look, she peered down at the cup, her face swiftly growing more and more flushed. "I can't believe I did that. I'm sorry." Opening the lid of the tea canister, she pulled Dee's cup closer. Still looking straight down, she said, "There you are," and then set the cup before him once again. Dee looked down emotionlessly at the cup filled to the very brim with black leaves, then brought it to his lips without saying a word. "Oh, now I've done it again, haven't I?" Her dumbstruck expression twisting, Rhea covered her face with both hands and dashed outside through the front door. Her sobs streamed out behind her. Dashing down to the end of the porch, Rhea cried out loud. She didn't know exactly why. Her tears spilled down into the snow that was piled as high as the floor of the porch, digging a tiny but deep hole. After about 5 minutes, she returned to the house. Still in the same spot as before, Dee was just taking the cup away from his lips. The tea leaves had been left on the table. "This is delicious tea," said Dee. "I'm not just saying that to be polite." "Honestly?" Rhea asked, her eyes still aimed at the floor. Dee nodded. Though he said nothing, Rhea knew exactly what he meant. "I'm glad," she said, her eyes turning to Dee naturally. "I'm sorry you had to see me like that." "Does it pain you to have to go off to the capital?" Though the question actually had no bearing on what Rhea had just done, it did serve to lighten her load. "It's not a problem," she said as she took a seat. Her voice was flat, devoid of intonation. Well, it just doesn't matter. I could stay here and keep living like this, or I could go to work in the capital. Papa sold me, but I don't mind. You'll be able to live off that money, and it'll be easier on me, too. Once I've gone to the capital, there won't be much point in me worrying about him anymore. Tell me, how old do I look?" Rhea looked up at Dee as she said that. The earnest expression the girl wore seemed to have completely come out of the blue. "I'm 17, she told him. "Do I look it? Everyone says I look over 20. And everyone's always surprised when I tell them my real age. Does that sound right? Am I that much of an old hag? I can't take it anymore, having people ask my age and then getting that look on their face. I've had it with hauling water from the well day in and day out, tilling the fields with a hoe, and scorching myself trying to keep the electric fences up against the monsters. I was relieved when Papa sold me to that guy. If I go to the capital, if I go anywhere but here, I'm sure it can't be as bad as all this." Dee listened quietly as she confessed emotion she'd probably never shared with anyone before. But then he said, "It probably hurts your father to do this." All the strength ebbed from Rhea's body. The violent emotions of the moment had passed. Looking down, the girl said in a flat tone, "I suppose you're right. But he'll forget about me soon enough. After all, that's what happened when my mother died." "Is that when his drinking got out of hand?" "Is that when his drinking got out of hand?" "Is that when his drinking got out of hand?" "Yeah, he's been that way for more than 10 years. Perhaps he can't get by without drinking. Not everyone can pick themselves up from any disappointment." "Yeah, but—" "Are you sure you're the only one who thinks it's best for you to go to the capital?" Rhea slowly turned to face the door of the next room. Her expression had grown stiff. Then she shook her head ever so slightly. "No, that'd be a lie," she replied. The words cut deep in the silence. Third part. 3 days passed. Snow fell relentlessly, reducing all the colors of the world to black and white. Some men who apparently worked for Brewer were at the house from sunrise to sunset, and since they took over the farm work, Rhea was able to start doing needlepoint. As she listened to the sound of the snow piling up, she would suddenly look up and always find Dee in her field of view. And each and every time, the graceful black shadow was staring out at the snow-covered landscape. Rhea couldn't help but wonder if the young man was going to disappear at some point into the harshness of winter. That night something happened. One of Brewer's young associates came back covered in blood and told them he'd been attacked by the trio on the northern part of the farm. His wounds were real enough. After sending Dio to investigate, the flesh trader had Rhea loaded into a wagon. "Where am I supposed to go?" "The capital, of course." Brewer's reply left her stunned. "But we're leaving without Mr. D." "You'll be fine without him. Those 3 freaks won't be back again. You see, D's off chasing his own tail. I'll stay here and explain everything to him. You'd best go on ahead of these boys. See you later." "Wait!" She wanted to cry, but there wasn't even time for her to say it before the wagon raced away in a spray of snow. The world of white sped by as they left the farm and got on the road through the forest. A wind and white snowflakes lashed Rhea's face, but suddenly both ceased. The wagon had stopped. The young man in the driver's seat let out a scream. Back by Rhea, the 2 others turned in his direction and gasped aloud. The heads of both horses were missing from the shoulders up. As it dawned on the young man that the heads had been removed. With it the sound of severed bone, a black form skimmed through the group for an instant, though the headless torsos of the animals remained in the same pose they'd held in life. They toppled over to one side, spraying geysers of black blood. On the snow to the right side of the wagon, Rhea saw a black beast fling the 3 human heads it had just bitten off. Now that is an example of my true ability. And with that remark from the opposite side of the vehicle, Sabé climbed in to join the girl. We couldn't get near that miserable flesh trader while he had a D around, but fortunately he was kind enough to do our work for us. Although you may not realize it yet, miss, he will be coming soon. We must hurry and get you properly prepared. What are you talking about? Just who the hell are you, anyway? You'll find out soon enough, Sabet said with the apparent relish baring his white teeth. Throwing the corpses from the wagon, he settled into the driver's seat. A massive obsidian mussel whistled into the seat beside him. As the black beast licked its chops, Rhea averted her gaze. Despite the fact that both horses lay on their sides, Sabe took the reins in one hand and made a sweeping gesture with the other. A reddish powder settled over the horses like a mist. As the decapitated bodies staggered back up, Rhea thought she must be having a nightmare. This isn't part of my power, and I can't do much more than make the horses run. but it should do for now. Off we go," he said with a shake of the reins. Shrouded in a ghastly air, the hideous beasts began to gallop once more. "What's this?" Sabe said, his eyes bulging. The stark white scenery wasn't moving. Actually, the wagon wheels weren't even turning. The scenery shifted, vertically, as the wagon was incredibly hoisted into the air. Sabe and the beast alighted without a sound. As the wagon was incredibly hoisted into the air, Sabe and the beast alighted without a sound. "Who the hell are you?" "Oh, it's one of you guys," said a voice that rained down on Sabe. The words fell from that of the titanic figure that had lifted the wagon and left the horse's legs kicking vainly in the mid-air. "So we meet at last," he chuckled. "I just got into town, but I'm glad I came straight here instead of stopping for a drink. See, I came out of the forest real quietly while you folks were going at it and hid myself under here. Did I surprise you a little?" If what the giant Dinas said was true, then even the black beast had failed to note his presence. Perhaps due to his surprise, Sabe stood there stock still for a moment as if lost in his thoughts, and then his whole face flashed vermilion as he commanded, "Kill him!" A flash of black lightning raced across the ground, halting in mid-air. Moving at super speed, the vicious beast had removed the heads of 3 people and a pair of horses in the blink of an eye, yet a gigantic hand had effortlessly closed around its throat to hold it at bay. "This little pup of yours has a face only a mother could love," Dinas said, but his words were accompanied by a harsh snap. The beast's body twitched for a few seconds before it moved no more, at which point Dinas tossed it back lightly over his shoulder as if he were discarding a little piece of trash. Limbing a smooth parabola, the corpse sailed over a stand of trees that was 80 to 100 feet high, and disappeared in a testament to the unbelievable brute strength of the giant. "Okay, now we're getting down to the main event. Just relax and make your move. I think I'll stick with this." And with these words, the giant took the hand he'd used to slay the beast, and put it back against the bottom of the wagon. Sabe's expression was one of indignation for a heartbeat, and then his lips curled into a satisfied grin. At the same time, a deathly stillness radiated out around him. "Welcome to the land of the beasts," he said. It was a second later that a pair of gargantuan forms pounced on Dinas from behind. "Whoa there," the giant said, barely managing to keep himself from tumbling forward as grizzly bears more than 6 feet tall mauled him mercilessly with fangs and claws. Blue sparks flew from his chest and the base of his neck. "What a joke," the giant muttered shamelessly, adding a shout of, "Here you go." And with that, Dinas hurled the wagon at Sabe, horses and all. The impact caused snow to fall from the stand of trees while Raya was thrown free of the wagon and struck her head hard against the ground, rendering her unconscious. "Just watch this," Dinas said to Sabe as he leapt away. Then he wrapped one arm around the trunk of each of the massive bears. Each weighed a good ton, but by the look of things that was light for him. He quickly squeezed their torsos down into an hourglass shape, and then there was a hearty string of snaps as their bones shattered. The beasts were spitting up blood as the giant slammed their heads together to finish them off before he made an easy leap into the air. Sabe didn't even have time to run. Just as the giant landed, he struck the man in the head with a fist the size of a boulder, killing him instantly. Bright blood spattered across the snow and Dinas's face. "Oh, that takes care of one of them. I guess that just leaves the one I'm here for. That should be a piece of cake." Dinas then turned around to face the way the wagon had come and added, "A handsome man against a snowy landscape. Talk about a freaking work of art." As he stood there, bookended by pure white forest, the young man in a coat blacker than the darkness looked like nothing less than a sculpture, hewn in heaven itself. Chapter 2, End.